Next, I'm going to move to the registration, which basically allow user to register when they provide their name, email, phone. This should be phone number, schools, password, and re-enter password. Alright, so how do we do this? So the idea behind this is that we need to get all the information here. So all the information here basically comes from form. So I'm going to open up register, and for this form, the method that is being used for this form is post, which means that I cannot see if I if I put all the information here. If I press submit button, you cannot see, you won't be able to see the data through your URL because the data has been submitted through post array. So I'm going to use get array first, just to see or just to get an idea what type of data that is being transmitted. So let me try that one more time. Press submit button, and up here you should be able to see all the data that is being transmitted. Alright, so the data that is being transmitted here, name, this is the variable, email, phone, no, not supposed to be phone here, the phone should be phone number. So that's why it's very important for us to identify this. So I do have name, email, I need to get phone, I do have schools, password A and password B. Alright, so that's mean that I need to modify, I need to check my my input here, the phone input here. So phone, I need to look to phone, which section basically. So I do have ID phone, I do have ID name, email, phone. Alright, which correspond to name, email, phone. Okay, so you have name, email, and this is phone. Alright, so the ID here, it seems that it is basically incorrect. It sent out phone, it sent out email also, not phone. So this is ID phone, this is ID email, this is email, this is phone. Okay, so one more time, why is it that I want to send the following information? This is 019, select a school, password, alright, again I do have name, email, okay, this is my email, but my phone number remain this, which is not supposed to send this one. Supposed to send number, not email. One more time. There you go. I'm not quite sure what happened. It's supposed to send this. So you have one data here. The second data basically separated by this and symbol. And then you have email, phone, and schools, and finally password A and password. Now I don't have password B. So what's going on? supposed to have ABC123, phone number, and submit. There you go. Alright, so you have your schools defined here, password A and password B. Alright, so now we have the data, we have the array data that we wanted to send to the server script, and then the server script will receive the data and process the data. So that's what I'm planning to do for registration. So how do we do this? So we need to submit to a PHP file, but our PHP file folder is not in the HTML folder. So which means that I need to change my directory, sorry, not there, where I send or where I submitted data. So the data should be submitted one up directory, and then in the PHP folder / to a file called register.php. So this is where it's supposed to send or to submit the data. So let's try again, because here you can clearly see the data submitted to /html register.php. So let me refresh this one more time. Phone number, schools, password ABC123, and press submit button. Alright, now you see that the directory for the file for the PHP now is correct. So it should be in the repository /php/register.php. Alright, so now we have this array, and we should be able to receive the data on the server side. Okay, how do we do this? First, we need to access our server directory. So our server directory basically in drive C, in the XAMPP, in the htdocs directory, the repository. Alright, in the repository folder, and I don't have a PHP folder just yet, so I'm going to create PHP folder. Alright, so this is where I'm going to put my PHP. Alright, so the register form will send all the data inside my form here to this particular file. So which means that I need to create this file in this directory. So you can just create from this folder. So we can put it inside here and create this file called register.php. Alright, so for the register.php, this is a server script. So what is basically PHP? So PHP is a server scripting language, and it is a very powerful tool for making dynamic and interactive web page. So PHP run by server. When you submit a form such as this, when you submit this form, when you press the submit button, all the data inside this form will be submitted. Okay, will be submitted, and in this case, since we use get array, so all the data can be visible or can be viewed through naked URL. But for now, we just use a get array for this. So PHP is a widely used programming language, and of course there are other competitors in the server-side programming. One of it is Active Server Page by Microsoft. You can also use Node.js. You can also use Python. So there's a lot of other alternatives, but one of the most popular server-side script is PHP. So how do we use PHP? So to use PHP, basically we need to create a PHP file, okay, in the server directory. So now we have created register.php. So which means that this will indicate that this is PHP script. Alright, so how do we use this? How do we create a PHP script? So PHP basically created through this simple tag here. So you start with this bracket PHP and ended or close your script with this closing tag. Alright, so this is just a very basic PHP script which will print out the following tags back to user. And we can use this for our application just to demonstrate how actually PHP works. And in this case, it will only print out this. So let's go back to our form here. So if I enter or I submit this form, you will see that it will suddenly print out my first PHP script because we call this PHP from our server directory. Alright, so you can see the URL here, repository php register.php, and it will print out this text because we just echo back this string, my first PHP script. So what happened here is that even though we pass all the data, but the data basically the script didn't take the data at all, didn't receive the data. It received the data, but we didn't capture the data through our PHP here. Alright, so how do we capture the data? Okay, so to be able to receive the value from a form, you need to use either post or get array. So for example, like if the form in this register use what we call as a get array method, so we can use the following instructions to read the value or to receive the value. Okay, so now we need to be able to receive the data from a form. So how do we receive the data through form? There are two methods that we can use. One through post array and the other one through get array. So I did talk about this before. Post array basically encapsulate the data and send together with the form. Get array basically send through URL. And in our example here, we use get method. So for get method, we need to use our get array. So to use get array, we can just use the following instruction. So in PHP, what we need when we would like to assign with a value or we want to define a variable, we just use dollar and its variable name. So dollar name equal, and since this is a get array, we can just use get, and we need to define, or we need to get the value from our get array here. So our get array here basically define in these sections the name here. So this name, we put it into here, right? So variable get array name from this name here. So it goes the same for the second data that we need to get, which is email. I think it's email. Alright, so the same, get email, make sure it is basically the same. So the second one is email. The third data is phone. So dollar phone, get phone. And the fourth data is school. Alright, so this should be just school, one only, dollar school equal get school. And then we have two password, so password, password A equal get password A, and for dollar pass B equal password B, missing here. So this is basically password, and password B basically comes from password A and password B. Now you receive the data and you have the data already. So let's just print out the value only. No need to do any other operation just yet. So to print out the data back to client, we just print out echo, echo, echo. We just echo everything. So this will return back to client what's basically the value that is being transmitted, and also a very good tools for us to use to check if the data has already been sent or not. So this is get array. So let me try this. We enter data and we press submit button. Oh, there's one here that is undefined. So you have your email, you have your name, your email, your phone number. This one you have ABC 123. So what we don't have is our school. Right, so we need to check our school. I believe that is because I've changed the schools to school. So one more time. Select my school and enter password. Press submit. Alright, so there you go. You can see the names here. Print out Sambaja email, phone number, schools, password A and password B. Alright, so now you have the data. You have the data already, so we can perform basic database operation. And in this case, we want to insert data into database with all this data. Okay, with all this data, we want to insert into database. All right, so how do we do that? So the first thing that we need to do is to create database connector. Okay, we need to create our database connector. So our database connector here, we need to create one file. So normally I create one database connector. The reason is that I don't have to keep on creating or writing the same code all over again. So I just write it once in one particular file, and then I can just make reference to that file in all my other PHP later. Alright, so how do we do that? So the first thing, we need to create a file called dbconnect.php. So inside this file, we're going to need our basic PHP structure. Alright. So in here, this is where we need to define all the database parameter, but we don't have our database yet. Alright, we don't have our database yet. Let me just put it this way. So you have your, we already have our client UI here, our HTML. Alright, so client side, we have the page and form. Okay, so user form here, get the data, and then press button, submit all the data. Okay, you can submit either through the use of get array or post array. Alright, so get array, post array, so we pass the data to our server. So the server, the file who handle this data is server-side script, and we use PHP. So when PHP receives the data, all the data that we submitted through our form, so it will basically receive by this file here. Okay, so it receives a name, email, password, schools, and everything. It's all here, right? So what do we need? What else do we need now? We need to be able to connect to the database to store all the data that we receive. So to store all the data that we receive, we need a database. Alright, so we need a database. So our database here is MySQL database. So we need to create database. We need to create the we need to create all our fields and all the database configurations first. So I'm going to show this section now through phpMyAdmin. So you need to access phpMyAdmin. Oh, sorry, localhost first, and go to your phpMyAdmin here. Alright, so in XAMPP, you don't have to create your database separately if you want to create a database. In cPanel or in web hosting, you need to create your database first in separate menu, in a separate interface, and then later you can access phpMyAdmin because the menu basically is being separated from the database sections, the database creation, and also the database management itself. So phpMyAdmin is the database management, and the other side is the database creation, where you need to set user and everything. Alright, so in XAMPP, you need to create database, just access the database menu here, tab. So provide the database name. So the database name, I'm going to give depository DB. Alright, so this is my database name, and then it is the best if you can just use, if you want to give like database, because it's already a database, depository or DB depository, DB. Alright, so just create. Okay, now you can start to create a table. So we want to store all the data here. We want to store email, name, email, phone, schools, password A. We just want to store one password only. No need for password A, password B. This one, we can use this for comparison in PHP also. So I'm going to create a table. So the table name is table user. And how many columns are available? So we need to define how many columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the other one for the identification, maybe I'm going to use that also. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Date creation 6 and ID 7. So I can use email as ID, maybe. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I need 6 column. So go. Alright, so the first data that I need is email. Data type is normally I just use varchar. So size of the data, normally I set for email not more than 50 in terms of the size, should be no problem. I'm not quite sure if you want to be safe, you can put 100. Alright, so that is the first data, or maybe you can just use user email or email, so that is up to you to name your variable. The second data is phone. So phone number also varchar, even though it's a number, but normally we store this as a varchar value or text value. So phone number 01947024993, so 10 character. So if you want to add plus 0, so you can add 12 character for the phone. And then we have the name. So we need name also. So normally name, you can just put it here. Okay, just user's name. So varchar for name, we can, I think 100 is okay. School, varchar also, we can set the size for school. Let's say school not more than 150, the name of the school, or maybe to be safe, if there's any longer school's name, so we can set 150. And then password. Alright, so password normally we store as text or varchar, and that depend on the password, not encryption, because normally I use SHA-1 for encryption. Hashing, alright, so hash. So normally I use hash so that we don't store physical password, we store hash password. So for hash password, normally the length of the character for the password is 40. So we set the password to 40. So what is hash? And the one that I normally use is SHA-1. So SHA-1 basically is a hashing algorithm that will hash any value that you user provide into 40 character string. So like for example, ABC123, if you use SHA-1, it will generate the following text, and this is basically hash value, and normally cannot be reversed unless you use a dictionary value. But if you use any value or your password value or any strong value, it will generate this 40 character long, and you can use this and store this in your database. Alright, so this is 40 character long. So I'm going to use a password with SHA1. And finally, date reg. I'm going to use date register. So this one is, I'm going to take server time. So for server time, I'm going to use date time. Where is it? Timestamp or date time. Date time is this. Timestamp is this with UTC. I think actually the same both. You can use timestamp, date time, because you have date. Which is date time. So date time normally we define length 6, right? So this is basically the fields for our user for now, right? So I'm going to save this. I forgot to set email as a primary key so that you don't have user cannot register the same email twice. So press OK. Alright, so that is basically for table user. So now you have your table and we are now ready to connect to the database. So we have our database ready, but we need to have a connector to connect to database. So remember this file, database connector. So this is the file that responsible to perform database connector. Okay, so for the database connector, what we need now is to define the following value. Alright, so I'm going to use server name defined as localhost. The second variable that we need is the username. So for XAMPP, we can set the username as root. Password, XAMPP, we don't have password for XAMPP. And finally for the database name, so the database name basically refers to this depository DB. So depository underscore DB as our database name. Alright, so this is all the variable that we need to use for XAMPP. Okay, this is XAMPP only. So now we need to define our connector. So this is our connector. So the connector, you can use a different type of connector. So for the database connector here, this is there are multiple type of access or multiple type of connector that we can use or to connect to database. So in PHP, there are basically two types of connector, either MySQLi or PDO. So MySQLi or PDO. So the difference is that you can look into this article here. Which one that you should use? So we look at this first. So MySQLi basically, let me check this. Okay, so you can choose either way, which one that you like, but that depend on your server itself. Alright, so what I mean by this is that PDO, if you choose to use PDO, what we call as a PHP data object, so PDO can work on 12 different database systems. Okay, 12 different MySQL database system, because MySQL database, there's a number of it's not just one type of database. Okay, so for MySQL there are a number of database that support MySQL, and PDO can work on these 12 different database system. Okay, But for MySQLi, it will only works with which is the name of the database is MySQL database. Okay. For the PDO, it can work with 12 different SQL type database. MySQLi only works with this specific MySQL database. So that is the difference. It's not just for MySQL. If you look at MySQL, this is MySQL, right? If you look at MySQL, it basically specific to this open source MySQL database. But if you look at SQL database, okay, if you look at SQL database, there are a number of SQL database, right? There are a number of SQL database that you can choose from. Let's try to see. Google Cloud SQL, RDS SQL, Microsoft SQL, SQL Server. There's a number of SQL database available, which basically if you use PDO, it can support up to 12 different database type. Whereas if you use MySQLi, it will only support MySQL database, only one. All right. So in this class, I'm going to use PDO type connection. So which means that I'm going to use the following connector, PDO connector here. So for the PDO connector to work, I'm going to take this example. Okay, so we just take this one. We just take this code here. Or better, we just take everything and put it into, I'm going to put it here, sorry. I'm going to put it inside here. So what we need now, we need to check again, and our database name here also, we need to update database name. $db name, $db name equal depository underscore db. Alright, so this is our db name. So I'm just going to put the database name here. Is it? Hold on. Use db name equal mydb. So this is db name equal $db, username, password. Oh, no need for that. We just remove this. MySQL host. Okay, so we're going to use the following example from W3 Schools. So you can see that the server name, username, password, and DB name defined through the following connector. So when we set the object con here to new PDO, we pass all these parameter, which basically correspond to our XAMPP MySQL database. So for XAMPP, we define our server name as localhost, username as root, password empty, DB name, depository DB. So when we try to connect to the database, if something goes wrong to the connection, it will print out this error message. If not, it will print out connected successfully. So now we can try this DB connect and see if you are able to connect to the database or not. So all you have to do is just type in localhost depository php / db connect.php. So if you type in dbconnect.php, you should be able to get this connected successful. Alright, so if something goes wrong inside here, like for example, I misplaced the name here, miswrite the names here, so I try to connect again, you will get this error called unknown database depository dbd. So because the name, I purposely gave the wrong name in here. Alright, so that basically for your database connector. So once you connected this successfully, so you don't have to use the connected successful anymore. So you can just remove that and you'll be done with it. Right. So for this, once you remove that echo, if you try to connect again, it will show nothing because we removed that echo. So this file later will be used in here. We are going to include this database connector together in the register.php. And this is very important file later on. If you try to move this to a server, you need to configure this file first before you are able to you move your application to your web hosting. Alright, so how do we use this into our application? Alright, so to include this into our application, into our register.php here, we need to add the following. Alright, so I'm going to add the following include statement, include once. So what do we include? We include the dbconnect.php, so which allow us to, the name of the file. This is the name of the file, should be in a string. So inside this directory, so you have to include once. So once you include once, you should be able to use the database connector as part of your registration process. Alright, so now once we're done with the connector, so now we can just remove all this, remove all echo here. We remove all echo and then we can start building our SQL query. So to register, we need to use insert statement. So I'm going to build a string. So let's say SQL register equal the following statement. So this is where we build our SQL query. So to insert into database, we need to give the following SQL statement. Insert into the table name. So our table name here called table user. Table user. So we need to provide all the value, all the field that we define in our database. So our field here is this: email, phone, name, school, password. Alright, so we need to define that. Email, phone, email, phone name, school, and password. Right. But this is written blue. This means that this is a mostly reserved word, but we'll see. We just use that first. Alright, because it turned to blue, this normally indicate that this is a reserved word for this statement. So we use all the table field here, email, phone, name, school, and password. And then the value that we like to insert, the values basically comes from the variable up here. So we start with name, and then the second data is email. The third data is phone. Fourth data is school. And the last data is pass. We don't have that. The variable here is pass A. So we just use pass A for now. Alright, just use pass A for now. So you have now the insert statement into table user with the following values. Okay, so this is the SQL statement, but this is not yet complete. We need to execute the statement. So how do we execute? So to execute, we can actually use the database connector that we define from DB Connect. Execute using the following PDO statement: query $register, $SQL register. Alright, so this is basically just very simple statement to execute the SQL register insert statement. But we need to have what we call as a verification or confirmation. So we need to check if the statement is correct or not. So if this is true, means that if this is success, if this is true, we let user know echo registration success, else we just echo back registration fail or failure. Okay. Alright, so now we have a simple registration script that allow user to register with the data, with the form. So let us try this, and just to make sure that the instructions or the script is working or not. So for now, we don't have any data. You can just click on this table user, no data at all. So let us provide some data. So I'm going to access this, refresh. I'm going to add my names, email, phone number, schools. I'm going to select one schools here with password ABC123, ABC123, and press this submit button. So this one is a registration failure. So we need to check what's wrong with the registration. Actually, it's not a failure. It's only that it uses the data is there, and I forgot to update a few things. Let me delete this data again. Alright, so structure, this one. Okay, I need to change my date reg. I forgot to set this default timestamp to current time. And my phone, it's supposed to submit phone, but this phone here, I didn't receive phone. Let me check one more time. Schools, it's supposed to receive phone, but the first one is email. Oh yeah, the structure is here is wrong. So I need to rearrange that again. So we start with email, not name. So I'm going to take this email. We start with email, phone, and name. Right, so email, phone, name, schools, and pass A. All right, one more time. So if the query is success, if there's no error in the execution of the SQL statement here, we should be able to get registration success. All right, one more time. Go back, refresh our page here, and enter our credential, phone number, school, select one, password ABC123, and press submit button. Why is it that you return registration a failure? So even though the data is here, I do have my email, I do have my phone, name, school, and password with date registration, but the instructions execute return error. Why is that? Let me show how to check. So I'm going to echo this. I just want to check, all right, what's wrong with the instructions. So to check, what you need to do now is to delete the data first and rerun the page. Okay, I'm going to resubmit the data and press submit button. The things that I wanted now is this. I wanted to see this SQL statement, and I'm going to take this one. All right, I'm going to take this, and I want to see why it returned registration failure. So take these instructions here, and you need to go. I'm going to delete this one more time. You need to go to this SQL tab here and enter that statement, this one. All right, so this SQL terminal here. So all you need to do now, just press this go, and you should be able to see if there's any error. There's no error at all here, so which mean that the data also show everything is correct. Nothing wrong with the data, but somehow it printed out a fail. Connection, query, SQL register. What's the reason behind this? Okay, so there's a few updates here. Just remove the if statement. So I mistakenly used the MySQL instruction, I believe. But we just go ahead and use these instructions where we just execute our SQL register through the use of execute functions here. All right, so to try that once again, we can just go back and delete the data inside here. Okay, no longer data in there, and then enter one data. Right, so you should be able to see your data in here with all the required data. But as I mentioned before, the password here, we need to somehow hash the password so that we don't store naked password. So to do that, we need to update our codes with the following. So the reason that why I pass to value here, pass A, pass B, we can do server side check, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to straight away use the following features that's basically available. SHA pass equal SHA1, and we just use these two to convert this into SHA1. So I'm going to store this value instead of pass A, SHA pass, right? So let me try that one more time and see the result. So delete it and just submit and check again our data. So now you see the password change to this SHA1 value. Alright, so it's no longer store naked password or readable password. Alright, so that is the registration process, and of course if you want, for now we didn't have much in terms of the response. So if you wanted to, if the registration is a success, we can just do this. We can just execute a simple script. So delete this one more time. So let me update with these simple instructions. I'm going to use try execute these instructions. So if the execution is a success, we can just echo the following. So script show an alert back to user and let the user know that the registration is success or registration success. But if there's an error in the execution of the PDO, we just print out echo registration failed. Sorry, we need to use this because we already used that outside. And echo, we just take this echo registration failed. Okay, so with this, what happened is that if user register, submit, you will get this info box or this alert that letting you know that the registration is success. But if I wanted to register again with the same password, or sorry, with the same email, submit, you will get registration fail because the server already store this, already register this email address. But then again, once the registration is a success, we can just go to the login page from there, or if it is failed, we can just go back to this register HTML, and I think we can do that from here. We can just use another JavaScript that allow us to go to the back to the so if registration is success, we can just go back to, we can just go to the login script, we can just go to the login Okay, we can just go to the login through the use of window.location.replace. We want to go to the HTML which is in the HTML dot login. Is it login dot? Our file name is login index register login.html. Login.html. Alright, so we wanted once the alert shows, we go to the following page. If it is failed, we go back to the register or registration HTML. Let's try this one more time. So I'm going to log in. I'm going to register, submit, registration fail. So it goes back to the same page. I'm going to delete the data. So try to register one more time to simulate a success registration. Success, registration success. Press OK. You will go back. You will go to the login page. Alright, so that's basically how it is being done to register user. I think that is more than enough for this class. And in your next class, we're going to look at the login, and we're going to move from there to the main page. Alright, so that's all for today. So see you in your next class. If you have any question, you can put it into the comment section. Alright, bye bye.